All right, I figured this would be a good candidate for case number 2 to show. So there she is, and I got a jerry-rigged phone holder here, so maybe it ain't moving around. I got a big old, if you're wondering what this is, a big towel will hold this lid. Anyways, let's get into this thing. I got a tape measure this time, so I can kind of see some measurements there. See if I can get this just a hair more organized. Try to anyway. All right, we'll start off down here in this corner. I believe this is a Waller knife, however it's pronounced. If I believe that's what it is, and if that is what it is, that's very rare. I mean, it's got all the characteristics of it. It's got the base way down low, and it's pretty narrow. They're usually a real narrow base on them, but the workmanship is just like it, because it's pretty much just a flake that's flaked along the edges there. That's a really cool piece. Stuff like this, man, you got to appreciate it. There's not much work that went into it, but for what it is, it's pretty unique. I mean, you can tell just by this workmanship down that edge there that they knew what they was doing as far as working rock. Really beveled. But that little thing right there, man, it would do some cutting sure enough. Especially this tip up here where it has no use wear on it or any kind of flaking whatsoever. I guarantee you this tip, when it was first made, it'd split you wide open. And I'm sure all of it would. And then around these, specifically this one side over here, they was really using, you see how beveled it is. And they retouched it up. But that's a really cool piece right there. I really like that. Let's get a measurement on that thing. What's that dude measure? About 2 5/8. Pretty neat there. Now, a lot of these, in this case, I see a couple of stories in here that I can remember from this case. But this next point is one of them. So me and a guy was digging in a creek one day, and he had found this tip, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes before I found this base. And he had to been maybe 20 yards downstream from me. And I had he said, man, I found a tip. And I went up there and checked it out and looked at it and everything. And I got, I don't know, 30 minutes later, I dug this base up right here, and I was like, man, that width looks real close on the width of that tip and the width of this base. And it's never happens, but it happened this day. It matched up perfect. Look at that. Now, I don't know if there's a possibility that from the year before we was walking in there and stepped on it and broke it, or maybe we was digging with shovels and broke it. But funnily, when you're in the creek digging with a shovel, I know a lot of people think we're crazy, but it's pretty daggone rare that you break a TQ point with a shovel. I mean, you're digging in gravel, so the gravel's moving as you're digging. It's shifting and everything. And it's not like you got a 50-pound rock sitting on that tip and you're going to get under it with a shovel and break it like that. Most of the time, whenever you go down with a shovel, it's going to glance off of it and get under it, and everything's going to kind of get to moving around, and you'll dig it up like that. So as far as breaking stuff like this, I'm not going to say it don't happen, because it definitely happens, but it's very rare to do that. And maybe that is what happened the year before, and they got separated like that. I don't know, but I thought that was dadgum neat. And I got my old trusty black and yellow. We'll do some backlit shots. Man, that Tallahatta Quartzite is it's beautiful. It's beautiful when it comes out of the creeks. It's awesome. I love pulling them out of the creeks. Pretty point there. do some backlit shots on a bunch of these. And some of them's not very translucent like that one. And some of them can be that thick and you can see through them like glass, but some of them is not that translucent. And these white spots in this Tallahatta Quartzite is fossil inclusions, if I understand correctly. And that's what gets eaten up. Anything on that rock that's white will get eaten up by the acid in our soils. We got real acidic soil from pine trees and stuff, and it'll get down in those white spots and just eat it until it's a hole in the rock, and it'll just deteriorate it. And whenever it's like this and it comes out of the creek, the rock is real dense. It's I mean it's still porous, but it's not porous as it is when it comes out of the ground. It's real dense, real solid rock. But once it gets in the ground, it starts eating on it, it gets really porous, and that acid in the ground, it just deteriorates it big time. Some of these I got tape rolled up on the back sides of them to keep them from sliding around in the case. That is a beautiful, beautiful point right there. That's the kind you're looking for every time you pull your basket up out the water there. Pretty point. Really pretty point there. And this whole frame is Tallahatta Quartzite. Man, that's awesome, awesome point right there too. Killer point right there. Definitely get a backlit on that. Look at that glow point. That's a pretty son of a gun right there. Made really well. I don't know if I can get the flaking to show on that point or not. A little. Not really that great. It ain't picking it up on camera, but it's got some really nice work on that point. Pretty point right there. Now this one right here, that's awesome. I mean, you can see right there that the tip has been broke off, and they started reworking on it, and they were still using that. Everything in this frame, I believe, looking at it, yeah, I think everything in this frame come out of the creek, everything. So that's why it looks so good. But yeah, you'd find stuff like this and you'd think that was broke without taking a better look at it. But that's definitely, they started working on it, reworking it, like they do all these points around here. See if I can glance and see one like this one right here that I'll show you in a little bit. That thing has been reworked down. I love that point. That's one of my favorite points right there. But it's been reworked down. That's the same thing that would have happened to this. That's whenever you get those real wide points, and but they're not but like this long, but they're still that wide where they just keep coming in and coming in with it and leaving them ears, and eventually the ears will go out, and it could possibly be a big old drill with big wide ears. But that's a pretty cool little piece right there. Normally anything Tallahatta that's been in the creek for a long time and you get it out, that's what you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be some pretty stuff. This right here almost looks like a Dalton dadgum preform, but I can't say that for sure. I would almost say that that is finished, not just a preform, but that was actually being used as a knife because it's made so well. Got some smaller secondary flaking and stuff going on with it. It's probably not translucent, just around the edges. Just depends on the material quality, if it's going to be really translucent or not. But you can see what I'm talking about on that flaking. And a lot of people would think that's a fluke. Most of the time, that's just a basal thinning. They'd thinning that base down and they'd get a good flake off of it, and it run all the way up. I wouldn't actually consider that a fluke. I don't think a lot of people would. That big old Manganji, what's that dude measuring in at? 3 3/8. That's another thing, you know, what we lacking in material, because if we had just chert around here, I would have an amazing collection. We lose so many points from they break so easy when you're digging them up off campsites because they're so rotted. I mean, if you just barely touch it, it's gonna break something on it. Maybe even cut it in half. I've went to pull them out of the banks before, and even a point this big and this thick, pull them in half, like right here. As soon as you grab it and you ain't got it worked out around it good enough with a knife and got the dirt out from around it, you go to just barely pulling on it, it'll pull the whole point in half. Yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. For what we lacking in material, we make up for. We've got some really good sites around our areas because there's so many watersheds around here, and of course you got to have water if you're gonna live. So, and all the games got to have water to live. So, I mean, we just got a bunch of waterways. So, with that being said, we have a bunch of points. But with that being said, we have a lot of large points. You know, this is a very probably. Now, I mean, we ain't got nothing like Missouri. I mean, you ain't coming out and finding 7-inch points like they be finding them up there. But it's hard pressed a lot of places to find a point over 3 inches. You know, you go down to South Mississippi and you 2.5. You done something. You start pulling out 3-inch points, you really done something. Well, around here it's pretty daggone common, like 2 3/4 is our average point size. So finding stuff like this ain't a problem. It's just a problem trying to find it like this and it be whole. But yeah, it's some pretty material when you can get it out of the creek, and sometimes when you dig it up, it's real pretty stuff. Now, another thing, I'll go ahead and pick this up. Everybody's probably wondering what this monstrosity was. Years ago, I had this point right here. It's really got some really good flaking on it, really good edges on it, and it's a real point. It's a good blade. It's actually a knife is what it is. I say point, use it roughly. Yeah, that's a dang good piece, but the base on it is broke off on one little corner. It's not perfect or anything, and I just wanted to throw something together to put in a case to look pretty cool. I killed a deer, got the leg bone, and really didn't know what I was doing right here. That's my attempt years ago at some pine pitch glue, and that's some real sinew off this deer leg right here. But I was attempting to do something. I really didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't really sturdy. You're supposed to put the pine pitch on first and then the sinew. So I did it backwards, and I know that now, but I didn't then. But it looks pretty daggone cool in a case anyway. I had a lot of questions about that thing at the Arrowhead shows. And another thing I was going to point out was this was one day in the creek. I found this piece, this, all these, this, and these 3. That was one day of digging in the creek. You don't find that very often. I go ahead and I get to these blades right here. These are, man, that's some pretty blades. I'm trying not to make this video carry on, but I get to talking even when it's to myself and I won't shut up. Ain't that bad? That's bad. Man, that's some pretty material. Pretty material, boy. We'll try to move a little faster through here till I can get to that centerpiece. Look at that joker. Man, what you talking about? That is a pretty preform. Pretty son of a gun. And that wasn't the only ones. That was just the ones I found between 3 or 4 of us that was digging. Man, it was some beautiful stuff that come out, and I would say we might have found about 15 of these that look like this. This ain't really no account, but I had found it that day, so I went on ahead and put it in there. Kind of clunky, funky, chunky monkey. It is pretty thin for its size, but whew, it's ugly. She's ugly. Now this one right here made me want to throw up. I pulled this son of a gun up, and when I pulled it up on the shovel, it was sitting on my shovel right on top like this. And whenever, as soon as I pulled it up, I seen that little piece of tip barely hanging on. It just fell off in the creek. There wasn't no need in trying to chase it down or anything because it's so minute. But I did break the tip off of that, digging that up with a shovel. And there's a possibility I got this ear too. I really ain't sure. But man, look at that dude right there. Golly. You know we putting a tape measure on that dude. Look at that bevel. That is insane. That's an insane piece. I know a lot of people that would restore that. But I can't bring myself to restoring something. I just can't do it. Look at that dude. 3 7/8. It'd have been 4 inches on the money. If I wouldn't have knocked that tip off, that'd have been a pretty high dollar piece right there. But man, that's beautiful. Look at that material too. Golly. You know that's killer now. That is just a killer. Even with the tip gone, that's a killer piece. Man, it makes me sick I broke that thing. I just can't get over them bevels. It's crazy. And the length on that dude, like a sword. Look at that. Kirk snap base. Yeah, broke point base. What that is. You'll see a lot of different colors in this Tallahatta, you know, depending on what it's in, what the rock bed source it's in, what kind of minerals was in, the dirt, the exposure to the rock, the tops of the rock beds and stuff. It changes. And man, some of it's got some really pretty colors in it. Let's see. Not nothing too special there. Ooh, that dude's clunky. You know, most of the time, whenever you find something like that, I mean, this one probably stacked up. You know, a lot of times a point like this, a lot of people say field grade G7, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it, but it does tell a story. The reason that point is thick like that is because it stacked up on them. They tried to run that flake and they couldn't thin it, and it stacked up on both sides, and they couldn't get it any thinner, and that's all they could really do with it. So they either used it until it was exhausted, and that was it for that, because you can't just keep resharpening it like you can them other ones after you start getting it stacking up on you like that. So that's pretty cool little detail. Man, look at this. This is, I'm telling you, one of my favorite points. Even though it's got that little bitty flea bite right there, I just love the shape of that thing. That is a pretty piece right there. Get a back lid on it. Pretty dadgum point. Pretty point, man. Let's see if I can get it up close. The way I'm set up, I just can't get real good flaking. You got to hold this Tallahatta just right in the light to be able to see flaking on it, and I'm not able to do it the way with my little setup I got here. Base is ground, man. It's just as ground and dull. Pretty little piece right there. Look at this little dude. Number 14. Yep. Pretty little piece there. Pretty material. Look at this dude. Man, that's an odd shape son of a gun. Reworking on it. He's working on it. It's kind of stacked up on him too, a little bit. They could have still used that though. Pretty unique looking piece right there. I wouldn't know what to call that. Almost looks like maybe that's a hafted scraper, but man, that's a big one. I don't know. Odd. Talk about a tip. Look at that tip. This one ain't so glossy like those other ones. You can kind of see some of the flake in there. That's a pretty piece right there. Pretty little point. Gary, maybe. I don't know. See this one right here. Now this would, I can just tell by looking at it, this would have been found on top of the rock bar and been sitting there a while. That's why it's got all those stains and stuff on it. But even stained up and even looking like that, look at that, still with that Tallahatta, still translucent. And that'd be about our average point size right there. What is that hitting on? Just like I said, about 2 3/4 average size. Next up, gonna be a pretty dude. That's a pretty piece right there. That and go in you to this day. Pretty point right there. Pretty material. I wish I could get some flaking shots on these things, but it just ain't gonna show for you. A little bit of bevel to it. And it looks like the rest of them ain't much to be said. I done drug this out long enough, sitting here talking to myself. So we'll just speed through it and end that show and tell on that case. Beautiful material. You gotta say that. At Tallahatta is some beautiful material when you get it the right quality. More creek stain on there. But hey, you gotta take what you can get, you know. Can't be turning them down when you get one. You gotta be satisfied with what you get. I mean, I'll take these all day, all day. Broke here, I'll take it. I'll take 15 of them and go home happy as a lark. What you talking about? But yeah, there's case number 2 down. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Just trying to, like I said, share with everybody some of my finds instead of just having them hanging on my wall where I'm looking at them. Maybe y'all got to enjoy them. I'm glad y'all come and hung out with us for a little bit, and we'll catch you later.